Hello, everyone. Welcome to What's Next for Appraisal. I'm Kim Angelone, Program Director at ACI. I will be your host today, and I'm joined by the ever so brilliant Evelyn Schallberger, Product Manager for ACI's Appraiser line of business.
Hello.
So before we jump in, just want to do a bit of some quick housekeeping. Mics and video are disabled, but please use the Q&A box to post questions at any time. We have a team on standby. They're super bored and they're only here to answer your questions. So please fire them away in the Q&A box, and we will reserve some time at the end of the call for some live Q&A. But also, please be sure to include your email address when you're adding a question so that if we don't have time to answer it during the session, we can reach out to you after. And just a reminder that all of our sessions are recorded and posted on our website, aciweb.com. We get lots of questions about that. So if you can't make it or you have to drop early, no worries. You can check us out at aciweb.com. So are we ready to get started? Let's get started. Today was a tough topic. So today's session is called Migration and the Bigger Picture. And Evelyn, this was a tough one. Like usually we're pretty good, and this was a tough one for us. We wanted to make sure it was worthwhile for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were trying to think in practical terms, but also in what's migrating over for Workbench, all the things. So yeah, it was challenging to not make too broad, but also give you real world tips. So yes, I agree, but I think it'll be helpful.
Hopefully it is. Hopefully it is. And if it's not, guys, we value your feedback always. So please, workbench@aciweb.com. Send us your suggestions. If there's anything in particular you want us to cover, please send it over to us. That's why we're here. We're here for you. But yeah, to Evelyn's point, like we wanted to cover all of the things. But we really wanted to narrow it down to make sure that this session is built for working appraisers. Mm-hmm. So the goal here is simple. It's really to help you stay in control through UAD 3.6, this shift, by tightening up 3 key areas that protect your time. How to think about the report, how to store your files, and then how you work in modern cloud-based tools. We receive so many questions about UAD 3.6, about Workbench, ACI's new cloud-based order management platform for appraisers, if you haven't heard. But I think the biggest question that we get more than anything is, what do I do with years and years of appraisal reports, with photos, with work file material? And yeah, guys, like we have some appraisers that have been holding on to stuff for like 40 years. There's so much like that they're just like holding on to. And so, we want to name something, or at least I want to name something up front that a lot of people don't say aloud. And Evelyn, what's really expensive? Everything.
Everything, but I'm guessing you're going to talk about cloud storage being very, very expensive, since this is something we've been talking about internally quite a bit to make sure that we are building a solution to meet everybody's needs.
That's it. Yep, that's it exactly. Cloud storage is expensive. And I was really surprised because it's not tangible, right? Like, it's not like I can just like pick it up, which, it to me, in my mind, it doesn't exist. It's just kind of in the cloud.
It's in the cloud.
Yeah, but it's super expensive, and it gets even more expensive when you treat it like a junk drawer. So if you're uploading everything and you keep every duplicate, never build a system, your costs just continue to go, and so does your stress. I like to think of it as like all of the photos that I have on my phone, and I take a ton of photos of just like mostly my dogs. There's like 1,000 photos of just my dogs on there. And if I have to move phones, I have to put it back up in the cloud. And then it's like, well, you don't have enough storage. Do you want to upgrade your plan? And it's like, come on, man. And it's expensive. It really adds up. So the same concept goes into, saving your work files. So the point of today is not move everything to the cloud. The point is to learn how to use cloud tools well so that you can get the benefits without creating a mess.
Yeah.
So
intentionally using it, right? Intentionally using it is going to make a really big difference. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And now's the best time to do it because the industry is pushing us towards UAD 3.6, which means we're moving into more structured, data-driven way of working. And then along with that, more of the appraisal deliverables, it becomes a package, and more of your workflow becomes connected. And it's where cloud-based tools really shine. They keep the assignment together, they reduce handoffs, and they can really help to catch missing pieces earlier. So appraisers can set themselves up for success in cloud tools by doing just a few things differently. And that's really what we're going to cover today. Like, for example, treating the cloud like a working environment, not just an unlimited storage unit. And keeping your active files organized. The key really is organization. Maybe building a simple archive system so that your older work is retained and retrievable without really driving up the cost of keeping them in a storage solution. And then getting comfortable with your cloud habits now. Cloud is very different from working from a desktop. So the easier it will be for you, it depends on how you set up those routines, how you get into it, how you become comfortable with it now. And really the payoff long term is it's less time searching, it's less time fixing preventable issues, and it's fewer last minute scrambles whenever you need to deliver a file. So today, we're going to talk about the practical side of that, like how to store your work in a way that's organized, secure, cost conscious, of course, and how to think about the deliverable under UAD 3.6 and what changes when you move from desktop into a platform. And then we'll have Q&A at the end. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
All right, let's dive in. Take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for setting the stage and the tone really well here, right? And I think it makes most sense to start with framing 3.6 as a workflow shift, right? When we've heard a lot about it over the last several years, and when people hear 3.6, the instinct is to think new forms. I replaced 1004 with URAR. I replaced 2055 with URAR. I replaced 2.6 appraisal update with 3.6 appraisal update. And they're really trying to have that one-to-one exchange, right? And yes, there are changes there, absolutely. But really, this is a shift in how the work is structured, not just how it looks on a page, right?
Yeah.
On desktop, a lot of the workflow is tied to the pages. It's just filling in the form, right? Field location, you guys have a lot of muscle memory. I get feedback all the time in the feedback modal, but this field in desktop, how does that apply? How does it translate in Workbench? There's definitely differences there, but knowing where things live and understanding that and transitioning that mindset as to a workflow shift rather than just looking at it as what's changing with the data is going to be really, really helpful, right? What UAD 3.6 moves toward is more topic-based, right? Structured capture. So the information is consistent across the report, not just placed correctly on a page. And so what that really does is cut down, Kim worded it very well, it cuts down on those small inconsistencies that you end up having to fix later, right? If you get a CR or clarification request or from the client a revision request, the idea here is if we're shifting it to a workflow focus, we're capturing those items, right, on the front end, less cleanup at the ends, right? So, a lot more time being spent on the actual analysis, which is the piece that, y'all are so gifted at, that we want to make sure you are focused on. So what doesn't change, right, for clarification, what doesn't change is the role. And I think there's been lots of conversation around, all the new tools that are being created and what we can do. And, appraisers are still doing the inspection. They're still doing the analysis. They're still doing that reconciliation. Like, there are parts that very much stay the same. What improves is consistency, right? Which ideally means fewer mismatches, smoother review conversations, right? And if you've ever had a clarification because sections didn't line up or this is exactly what helps reduce that back and forth. So the practical takeaway, and we talked about at the beginning, we wanted to give practical feedback here. The practical takeaway is just building a consistent order of operations as you go.
Yes, that's it exactly. An order of operations and being consistent. I think you hit it whenever you said that it's like muscle memory. Like the
Yeah.
2.6 is muscle memory. You know exactly where those fields are. You know, if it's a single family, you know what form you need to use. If it's a condo, you know what form you need to use. And you just get so used to filling that out. But now it's all really it's all the same form, but it is completely different every single time. And so it takes away all of that muscle memory. And now it's more focused on context and different topics and areas of the analysis and the inspection than it is necessarily areas of the form.
Exactly.
All right.
Absolutely. Well, I think it makes sense to transition into this delivery zip 2 next versus work file. We get a lot of questions about that. In our last Innovation Council, we spent time talking about this as well. This is my work file. This is what I'm used to doing. This is what I've done before. And so we want to call out here again, this one's more of a mindset shift as well. But once it clicks, I think it really simplifies things, right? And so with UAD 3.6, which also interesting enough, we got a question in the last session is, what are you talking about with a zip package? So if anyone is not in the know for what the deliverable is for you as appraisers to give to clients with 3.6, it's a zip package. In that zip package, you have the PDF, you have your image folder, and you have your XML data. So that is your deliverable now. I think I got a question today about how to convert that to ENV. So just want to add clarity there that what your deliverable is a zip package. And so you want to think of that as your official record, right? That's your deliverable. Again, it's the best way we can describe it is what you're delivering to the client. So you need to be able to send, retrieve, resend, possibly. Then everything else lives outside of that, right? Some of the things that we worked through again with our Innovation Council, the notes, extra photos, if there's additional research, supporting material, like there are a lot of things that we understand may not go specifically in the report, but it needs to be saved in the work file, right? It needs to live with that. So this is where I think in a lot of cases, folders can start multiplying, right? People can accidentally create a lot of chaos here, right? With trying to differentiate between what is my deliverable versus my work file and overlapping a lot of it. So really here, the key concept is one master zip, that's your source of truth, right? Not creating multiple copies of that unless you've made a revision, right? And in Workbench, you'll see those different revisions and it will actually save into your files and photos center every time you've made those revisions. You're going to download that work file. So, we've had some try to unzip and repackage, and I'm going to take this piece of the PDF and I'm going to put it over here. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure you're regenerating your entire zip. And if you need to look inside that zip to see what's in there, extracting it maybe into a temporary folder, reviewing what you need, and then, you can clean up from there, but you can also just use Workbench to clean it up, right? That's your most recent. That is your most recent zip. That's your most recent version of the PDF and your XML. So if changes are going to be made, you want to do it within there. So if you need to revisit something, resend something, you make changes, you have to re-sign, then you can do all of that from within there. So, and if you resend, changing labels, if you're storing things locally, right? Because again, differences between our zip and our work file. We want to make sure we're labeling that really clearly, something simple. Most of you appraisers have your process, but maybe it's time to revisit that or understand if you need to change naming conventions or things like that. And I think future you will very much appreciate that as revisions or clarifications do come up over time, because while we are very excited about the fact that I think that 3.6 cleans up a lot of the ambiguity, it's going to be a learning transition, right? And I think there will be clarifications that come through. And so, that's one couple things that I would note as far as a mind shift with regard to your delivery zip and your work file, what to keep together, what to store separately.
That's, spot on, Evelyn, spot on. And you're right. I mean, Workbench is going to keep this info for you. This is really for all of the legacy stuff that you guys are dragging around in a file cabinet. And then also just moving forward, right? So creating those good habits now, so that if you do want to keep your work file, on your local hard drive, or, maybe you keep it in like one of those little USB drives, wherever you store your long-term storage, just putting in those good habits now, and don't break up that zip package, because that zip package is your actual deliverable of the report.
Right.
All right, so with that, let's jump into desktop to cloud workflow. This is huge. It really is. This is such a big change for so many appraisers across the industry, and not just ACI customers. We love you very much, but this applies to really any appraiser that is using a software out there.
Yeah.
And it's really the heart of the shift for a lot of appraisers. Will feel this over the next couple of years. Desktop tools trained us to work in a certain way, and cloud tools reward a different set of habits. So there's really just like 5 differences that we wanted to bring to your attention. And I think once you understand them, maybe hopefully the cloud stops feeling so unfamiliar. We get tons of questions about it. So we just wanted to hit on some high points for you. One of the biggest differences really is where your work lives. So on a desktop, your files are tied to a machine. Your workflow depends on where that machine is and how you manage copies, backups, folders, right? Like all of your work is in your office, on your desk, and that's where it exists. But in cloud tools, the assignment lives in a shared environment. So think of it as like one workspace that you log into, and your order details, your tasks, your photos, your evidence, and outputs stay together. So this means you stop just moving files around and you start accessing the same source of truth. Security and access, this comes up so much. So desktop security, it really tends to be about the computer. It's the password that you have on the device. It's your antivirus program that you have. Maybe it's local folder permissions if you have them set up in a certain way. Whereas in the cloud, security becomes about the account. It is your password, your multi-factor authentication, and who has access. So this is why simple security habits become more important than ever. Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and being careful about where you stay signed in. So just a quick tip that I keep in mind is that a weak password is a bigger problem than a slow computer. Updates and change management. I'm actually pretty excited about this because we get a lot of feedback from appraisers about needing to run the web updates. Nobody ever wants to run those web updates on that desktop software. And desktop software, it changes in big chunks. So it requires a major release. And then things stay the same for a while until you run those desktop updates. Whereas cloud tools update in smaller pieces and more often. And this helps improvements arrive faster. And it also means that you need a routine so that the updates don't surprise you midstream. So a simple routine could be something like once a month, you just take 5 minutes to review what changed, test it on a practice file, and then you're back to production with confidence. We post all of our release notes on our website. So if you're ever curious about any of the updates that we're making to Workbench, you can go and check out our website and see what we're working on at all times. And then workflow style. So in desktop, many appraisers work in long sessions. So you build your appraisal report for a while, then you do a big save, and then a big final review at the end. Whereas cloud workflows usually feel smoother whenever you work in checkpoints. So you want to work in smaller chunks, like shorter loops, and then small confirm steps, then move on. So work on a section, save, then move on to the next, work on a section, save, and then move on. And this matters because interruptions happen. You get phone calls, you get questions, schedule changes. You have to stop what you're doing to join our podcast. Checkpoints make it easier to stop and then restart without losing time, getting reoriented again. And then lastly, and I lied earlier, this is actually my favorite point of this slide, and that is device flexibility. So on your desktop, your main workstation is the center of everything. It is your physical computer. That is everything. Whereas for cloud tools, you can work from different devices. And that could be a huge relief whenever you're moving between the office and the field, even to your vacation laptop. And I know for a fact some of you have those because we hear about them all the time. So the cloud gives you the flexibility to be able to work from any device at any time. So the goal really here is it's not to be a tech expert. The goal is to adopt a few cloud habits now so that this feels routine later on. You know, your time gets protected whenever an assignment stays together, access stays secure, updates feel predictable, and your workflow has checkpoints instead of one big finish at the end.
I think one of my favorite talking points that you brought up, Kim, is the flexibility, right? I think that is, once folks get used to it, right, that's a big unlock.
Mhm.
Once you get used to it. And I think, you know, the theme overall with a lot of this stuff is just change in general. And I know that's difficult for everyone in a lot of cases. And so just having that flexibility is going to make such a huge difference for you guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so the last thing that we want to touch on here before we get into some live Q&A is modern tools that reduce rework. So important. So we want to talk about modernization in plain language, because this is where a lot of confusion comes from. You know, most appraisal software that is in the market was built around the form. It's built around the URAR. You know, you can open the report, you fill out the report, you generate the report, and then that solves one part of the problem. But your actual job, it's bigger than the form. An assignment has order details, messages, tasks, evidence,
managing the whole
status,
assignment,
packaging, delivery,
right.
Like it has all of the things.
Right.
And the form is only the output, but the assignment itself is the actual work. And that's the difference between a form tool and an order management platform. So here's what a platform changes day to day. And we'll use Workbench, of course, as the example. So instead of bouncing between email, folders, photo apps, notes, and a form filler, you're working in one workspace where the whole assignment stays connected. And this matters in a few practical ways. So first, the workflow is guided by topic. So you're less dependent on that muscle memory that Evelyn mentioned earlier. You follow a consistent order and it becomes repeatable. Second, built-in checks catch gaps earlier. This is so important. This is a big deal because the most expensive time in any report are those last 20, that last like 20% when you're hunting for those missing pieces to pull everything together. Third, photos and evidence, they stay tied to the correct assignment. So like Evelyn mentioned, everything is together. We keep everything for you. So if you need to go back and access your photos, or you need to take a look at your work file, or you need to know that most recent version of the report, everything is kept together in one location in an order management platform. Fourth, version history. So this supports clean QC and correction. So it keeps that audit trail. So you can see anytime that you go in and you make revisions, any updates that are needed, it keeps that entire history for you. So it takes out all of that guesswork about what changed. And then fifth, the delivery package is standardized. So under UAD 3.6, that means the single zip package, which, as Evelyn mentioned, it includes the PDF, the photos, and the XML. And Workbench, or any order management platform, really should keep the package complete and tied to that assignment for you. So where do appraisers feel it? Well, you spend less time hunting at the end. Final review goes a lot faster, and you get fewer preventable revision loops because there's fewer pieces that drift apart in between steps. Anything to add, Miss Evelyn?
I mean, less hunting down for your reports, faster reviews, fewer revision loops. Sign me up.
Sign me up.
Right?
Yeah,
Tracking, I think in all seriousness, the versioning, I think, is a big one that we've gotten a lot of questions on lately. With being able to track changes cleanly for a particular report. I get, you know, when the client sends me this, how am I going to know the difference? it's all tracked in Workbench, right? Version 1, version 2. It's also in the bottom left-hand corner of your URAR. Fun fact, if you did not know that, it's on there as well. But so that you know which version it is that you're working out of. But yeah, I think that's we've been talking about that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I know that I get super excited sometimes when I talk about this. So it probably sounded like I was trying to sell you, and I promise you that I wasn't. It's just there is a big difference between having everything in one location versus having one part of the work that you need to do. And so when we're talking about moving from a desktop into a cloud, and we're talking about using modern solutions, it's important that you keep everything in one place because everything is so scattered and there's so many new things that are popping up left and right in this industry that you want to keep everything centralized. So whether that's with us, whether that's Workbench, or however you want to manage your day, we're not here to tell you how, but just it's important that you keep everything close because that will ultimately save you the most time in the end. Speaking of time in the end, we have 4 minutes left for some Q&A. So let me pop that off. There we go. All right. Are you ready, Miss Evelyn?
Always. Fire 'em away.
All right, so let's see how much time we have because we do have some questions coming in. First and foremost, Evelyn, I'll let you take this one. Is UAD 3.6 just a new form or is it a bigger change?
It's a very good question. And I think I feel like I was talking to you about this earlier today, and that I made a comment. I got a question today in the beta feedback form. What is 3.6? What's changing? And my goodness, I would really encourage anyone who is not yet well informed to share this with everybody. Have them come join these calls. Like, right, there's so much education, there's so much documentation around it, and we're running out of room for that to be the question, right? But as far as is it just a new form or is it a bigger change? I mean, we talked about earlier at the beginning. I said a lot of the time appraisers were kind of correlating it with just a new form, right? 1004 is now your AR, 2055 is now your AR, 1073 is now your AR. But it's more than that. It's so much more than a layout change. I think we've said this in different ways a lot of times. It's more structured, data-driven capture. So the report is being built from organized information. We're not relying on, location or, hey, did you read page 27 on my report? That's where my addenda has the comments about why I made the adjustments that I made in here, right? Inspection and analysis stay the same, but with some additional data points, but the workflow is what we said earlier, right? More topic based and consistency becomes more important. So is it just a new form? Absolutely not. It's a huge change. It's changing across the industry too. It's not just for appraisers and just for this one report type.
New standard, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, so we have time for one more question. We can sneak in, and I will take this one because you guys never let us get away with anything. Where is ACI with vendor verification?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Thank you so much for asking that question. It's our favorite question. So this goes back to, I think, what we're building, right? So we're not just building a form filler. We're building an order management platform for appraisers. And it's a place where you can manage your work in one location. And that's taking a lot more time than we anticipated. So we're still working through vendor verification with the GSEs. We're continuing to make progress. It is slow but steady progress. And so we're looking forward to vendor verification happening very soon. We're getting ready for it. We have some training materials that are popping up on our website as we speak, and we will be reaching out and scheduling some live demo and trainings on the day that we are verified. So that's coming up right around the corner. If you do receive a UAD 3.6 order, In the meantime, please contact our sales team. We want to make sure that you, as our valued customer, are taken care of. So if you get a UAD36 order before we give you the green light to use Workbench, please contact our sales team. In the meantime, everyone has access to Workbench. So please go in there, poke around, try to break it, and then give us your feedback so that we can continue to iterate it and make it the best solution possible for you. All right, and with that, I'm seeing the curtain call there pop up, Miss Evelyn. Looks like your son's giving us the, it's time to go, Mom. All right, so we're going to wrap up here in just a minute, but before you jump, I do want to share what's coming up next in this series because it builds directly on everything that we talked about today. So our next What's Next for Appraisal session is Thursday, April 2nd, and the topic is AI and Appraisal, Practical Automation, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So we are bringing Kevin back. He is going to join Evelyn and I, and this is going to be a very down-to-earth conversation. We're going to talk about how AI is already changing appraisal practice, and Kevin will share some practical tips on how appraisers can use AI as a partner in their work, especially for the parts of the job that eat up your time, create rework, slow down that final review, like all of that commentary that you guys have to provide. We have some tips that we can share with you. So if you have any questions that we didn't get to today, or if you have questions you want us to cover in future sessions, please send them to workbench@aciweb.com. We do read them and we use them to shape each session. So thank you for spending part of your day with us. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on April 2nd for AI and Appraisal Practical Automation. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Evelyn.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Evelyn's son, for keeping us on time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.